Board and administration make their way to the dais. It's time for the regular meeting of the Howell Township Board of Education to come to order. And Mr. Miller agreed not to laugh at me if I stumble because we have a new agenda format this evening. So we'll have a roll call of the board. Mr. Gurman? Dr. Lowe?
Present.
Mrs. Malley?
Here.
Mrs. Mangano? Here. Mr. Miller?
Here.
Mrs. Okerson?
Here.
Mr. Thor?
Here.
Mr. Bongiovanni?
Present.
Mr. O'Brien?
Here.
Announcement by the President as read by the Secretary. Adequate notices of this meeting were distributed in accordance with Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, on February 15, 2018. Would you please rise now to salute the flag and remain standing for a rendition of the national anthem sung by Addison Fazio of Aldridge School, and then an announcement by the President and Superintendent. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. Oh, the ramparts we watch, we're so gallantly streaming, and the rockets regular, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave? Oh, the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Please remain standing. Please remain standing.
See, I wouldn't do that.
I'd like to ask Addison if she could stand by, because we would like to present her with something in a moment. If you could just stand by. Tonight, I would like everyone to join us in a moment of silence. We, of course, have the tragedy in Florida, which strikes all of us so deeply as parents, as members of this district. And in addition, we also suffered another loss, someone very, very special to this district, a teacher, a friend, someone who has made an impact on so many lives. Barbara Fernandez passed away suddenly, and our thoughts and prayers as a board and as a district go out to her family, to her friends, to the children whose lives she enriched and made better through her service. And we thank her for those years of service, and she is greatly missed. And for the victims in Florida, our thoughts and prayers go out to them. I know there is a lot of dialogue going on, but tonight, let us just join in a moment of silence in their memory. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Addison, don't go too far away. I would like you to join in Mr. Bongiovanni and I at the podium, if you would.
It is
I know,
now
Mr.
time for
Sanisek.
additional recognitions, and we will start with the superintendent and board president's comments regarding those recognitions. Sirs.
Well, I will gladly defer to our superintendent to get the ball rolling as we honor some of our winter athletes and students. Whatever that noise is, is that my? Okay, sorry about that. I will turn it over to you, Mr. Isola, to let's get the recognitions ceremony started.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to our February meeting. It's always a point of pride for this board and for this school district to recognize some accomplishments from our students, from our staff, and we take great pride in doing that fairly regularly because we have such a accomplished student body and staff. So tonight will be no exception. We will take the opportunity to recognize some of our winter sports champions, and we have a lot to celebrate tonight. We'll be taking the opportunity to recognize our middle school North cheerleading team as well as the middle school South wrestlers. Both of them had really wonderful seasons. Not only did they get the wonderful experience of extracurricular activities and athletics, but they actually did what we expect them to do. They shined, and they were among the best of the best, and we're very proud of that. And with no further delay, I'll ask Mr. Fury. Where's Mr. Fury? Mr. Fury, our vice principal here at Middle School South and helps Middle School North. I apologize, we're in Middle School North, correct, Mr. Preston? Role in making sure that our athletic programs are running smoothly. So, Mr. Fury.
But he is very proud of the job that you did, and we actually watched it together in Mr. Farley's office. So great job, and I'm going to let you guys say a few words about your middle school North cheerleaders.
Okay. All right, so congratulations to the Middle School North Cheer team. This year's accomplishments took extreme hard work and dedication. Our team practiced every day throughout the season, as well as over winter break and even on days when we had school off. The girls cheered at the basketball games, even organized a fundraiser for a former North student who was in need called Cheerleaders Spreading Good Cheer. on January 28th. The Hornets got to take the floor at the Tiger Pride Classic held at South Plainfield High School. They took first place in the middle school division. The North cheerleaders then went on to get the highest score of the session out of 19 teams. So we are very proud of them, and we just want to thank and congratulate them and their parents for everything. Thank you.
Mr. Isola, I'd like to ask Mr. Miller and Mr. Thor to join them at the podium. That'll be all right? Okay.
All right, so we're just going to call each of the girls down that could make it tonight. If you hear your name, come on down, girls. Kylie Bitsko. Mia Medkoff. Yes.
Elizabeth Agnello. Reagan Zajac. London Kalinovsky. Ava Metcalf. Madison Stearns. Angelina McGuire.
Carly Braverman. Riley Fitzgerald.
Ava Zaltzman. Ada Evans.
Mary here. Caitlin Prendergast.
Rachel McBride. Olivia Saris. Grace Bailey. Emily Bazinski. Caitlin Finnegan. Jayla Davino. Alina Abramson. Gina Oberschauen. Mariah Sierra.
I believe Ms. Ogerson and Ms. Mangano, you're going to be joining for the recognition of the wrestling once they come up.
The next team we're going to talk about are the Howell Middle School South Huskies and their wrestling team, and the amazing season they had this year. After talking to their coaches and talking to Dr. Henning, their principal, who's very proud of them, and he could not be here tonight, but he wanted me to let you guys know how proud of all of you he is. They talked about how dominant this team really was, that in matches, a lot of those matches really weren't close, that this team, as a team, did such a wonderful job of dominating their competition, and that even showed when they went on to have, I believe, 6 divisional winners and 4 Monmouth County winners, and I believe even like 3 Tri-County winners. what an amazing team this is. If I could have coaches Mike Versierda and Justin Morello come on up and the amazing job they have done. First of all, I want to thank the Board of Education for, I guess, really having that philosophy of the importance of the programs, sports programs, and the other things that we offer at our schools. I got to thank Mr. Fury as well. Every time I ask him if we can wrestle down in South Jersey, or if we can go into another county, he lets us do anything that we want to do. He lets us do. He kind of scratches his head. Where are you going this week? Where are you guys going this week? But I think giving us that flexibility is kind of what helps us. And I really don't remember the last time I've heard no from my bosses and my athletic director. And I think that's huge. Howell, I'm sure you guys know, Howell has one of the best, arguably the best public school. Well, it is ranked the best public school wrestling team in the state of New Jersey, and it's ranked in the nation. It might be top 30 or so, top 20. That's really amazing. And I think it's a reflection of the parents, the schools, and the overwhelming support. Kids had a great year this year. They did. I appreciate the words. Very true. Kids had a wonderful year. Really came a long way. I think one of the neat things that I wanted to mention was my 8th graders. The 8th graders, as 6th grade, it might be one of the few groups have done this. They came in as 6th graders and won their division tournament, and the overall league championship. And they won it as 7th graders, and they won it as 8th graders. All three of those things, which I thought it's a pretty neat accomplishment, going through your middle school career and being, probably one of the better teams around. It's awesome. And personally, on a personal note, Coach and I, just the kids that we have, we're better kids, better personalities, and just nice kids. I can't tell you how lucky I am. We're in a really good place. And, I just wanted to thank the kids personally for having a great year. Coach, I don't know if you had any words or?
Pretty much hit it right on the head. Very impressive that we were able to come away with 2 Tri-County champions. You have to wrestle several different tournaments in order to get there, and I just want to acknowledge that we have the 2 here tonight. We have JT Goodman and Sebastian Ortega, and it's a really incredible accomplishment.
We have some certificates of recognition for the team members we're gonna call. I know there's a handful of kids that are not here. Okay, if you do hear your name, again, come on up, guys, and get your certificate. I'll pull them up if you guys wanna. Sure. Mike Capilla. Sebastian Ortega. Sam Mealy.
Coach V. Coach.
Gavin Suter. Just wanted to recognize our board members, Miss Ogeson and Mrs. Mangano. Who are here to help. Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Sometimes I don't remember. Glenn Giordano. Gerard Matthews. Will Hillier. Steve Morrow. JT Goodman. JT was a two-time Tri-County champ, which is really impressive, actually. It's pretty good. Ian Suter. Anthony Mazzio. Dominic Cataldo. Logan Silvestri, Alex Edwards, Christian Dare, Matt Heinz, Devin Garcia, Joe Lynch, Ryan Kutha, Richie Dobb. A lot of no-shows tonight. I'm very upset. These guys are going to get in trouble. Mike Proteline, Connor Skorinsky, Nate Lorenzo, Ryan Eckelman, Lee Boyan, Martin Mazer, Tyler Morath, Shane Hughes, Robert Wessel, Luke Dalton, Eddie Pascal, Danny Urban, Danny Vasquez, Nick Romano, Casper Dorosky, Anthony Pucciarelli, and Tom Richards, our heavyweight. AJ Brown, our honorary captain.
A lot of technical difficulties.
We miss any members of the Howell South Wrestling team? I'm sure it's a possibility. I might not have put the name in. We miss anybody? Okay. Luckiest guys around. Thank you, guys. Howell South Wrestling.
Trying to add wrestling.
Thank you, coaches. Great job.
Mr. Bongiovanni, you had something to add?
Before you leave, both the cheerleaders and the wrestlers are both athletes, and I want to tell you something. For the ones who are going to be going up to How High, the cheerleaders are 9-0 in their competitions this year at the high school. The boys team hasn't been defeated in wrestling at the high school. They're number 3 in the state. They're the top-ranked public school team. You guys have a lot of big shoes to fill. But a lot of those faces that we see on those teams are the faces we've seen before this board in the past. I'm sure you're going to do yourselves, your parents, and the school proud. Congratulations.
Okay, it is now time for the board to go into executive session. If we could have a motion while the students are going home to do their homework?
Move it.
I'll second.
Please note the motion printed in the agenda. The board will go into executive session. The only topic this evening is the HIB report. The executive session, we also discussed the topic of the school safety and security plan. It is now time. Gotta find my spot here.
I think I'm up.
It is now time. It is now time for the. It should be board president comments, but I got approval of the minutes. May we take the minutes just to keep me in order, sir?
Why not? I need a motion.
Move it.
All right, moved by Ms. Malley, seconded by Mr. Miller,
May I take that around, sir?
please.
Mrs. Malley? Yes. Mr. Miller? Yes. Mr. Gurman?
Yes.
Dr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mrs. Mangano? Yes. Mrs. Okerson? Yes. Mr. Thor?
Yes.
Mr. Bongiovanni?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Minutes are approved, 9 votes in favor, none opposed. The correspondence the board received will be noted for the record. And now my agenda says it's time for the board president's comments. The president of the board, Mr. Timothy O'Brien, your comments, sir.
Thank you. My comments will be brief, but obviously, every person on this dais has been affected by what happened in Florida, what's happened earlier in the year, and what's continued to happen time and time again in our society. We as a nation do have to come together and come up with solutions that will address the questions that are obvious to everyone on how can this happen, how can we help in terms of prevention, detection, assisting those who are in crisis so they don't get to the point of being in a position to take other human lives, and to continue to focus on providing a safe, welcoming environment for our students in our schools. It's a very, very difficult question that won't be answered tonight, but I can tell you that each member of this board has been profoundly impacted by this and will continue to work very, very closely with our administration, with our partners in the police, to form sound policies that advance as much as possible the questions of security for our children and our staff. One of the things that we can work on and have been working on and continue to work on as a board and as a district and as a community is culture. Culture is critical because culture is the driving force that turns back evil, that shines the light in the darkness, that allows us to identify and support children who might be in crisis, allows us to create an environment of trust in our schools, that children can go to their teachers, their guidance counselors, their school resource officers, their principals, and their parents. That culture is critical. We need to continually work on strengthening the role of empathy, the role of understanding. We need to ask our children and our staff and our families to lead in this area, to continually look to combat the forces that drive children to isolation. We need to constantly look to ourselves and to others to reinforce our sense of community, because that sense of community is what separates us from what we see out there in the chaos of this world. We need to make sure that we continually focus on the fact that we are a community. And as we work towards that and continue to reinforce and support that, we will also look at ways that we can enhance and protect the very people that we're here to serve, our children, every day. But I commend this district and this board and our leadership team and all of our staff for the hard work they put every day into enforcing that positive culture. We have many leadership programs that address the needs. We had earlier children come in to talk about how they can work. They came to the board and spoke to us earlier this year because they had the initiative. They see it. They understand that empathy is in short supply and needs to be a focus, as well as character. And all these things are things that come as part and parcel of education. Mr. Isola and our staff are teaching them to be critical thinkers, but they're also teaching them to be good, kind human beings who can lead and help others to find the light. So I think as we move forward, next week there'll be our police chief. We've been blessed with a very, very extraordinary partnership with our Howell Township Police Department. Many of the PD here are parents of children in the schools themselves, and they care as much or more as anyone for the safety of the children and the staff. And we're very, very fortunate in having a long-range and long-term partnership with them over the years that has resulted in, we believe, some of the best practices, policies, and protections for our children. We'll continue to work with them closely, and we are very grateful and appreciative of their support. Next week, Chief Kudrick has asked for and been given access to Middle School North to provide a forum for our community. This is not a Board of Education event. This is an event by the police department, but obviously all board members are welcome to attend, and I hope to see you there. Chief Kudrick's asked Mr. Isola and myself to join him that evening, and we are happy to support our chief and the police in providing information and guidance to the public. So I believe there are certain parameters that the police department is running in terms of attendance. You have to be a Howell K-8 resident, Mr. Isola, is that the understanding? And they have to register beforehand, and it'll be closed simply to parents of the K-8. So we will look forward to seeing those parents who are interested and want to come down next week. And I welcome and look forward to seeing all the board members that can make it to join us as well. We lost a very valuable member of our community in Ms. Fernandez, an incredible educator, someone I've heard so much about over the last couple of days, and it's a great loss. But as you know, we go on, her legacy will be the impact she's made on so many lives over the years, of 30 years of service. And as I said earlier, she will be missed. It's tough. We will continue to work together to move forward and to accomplish our mission. And we're blessed to see the talent of our young students come out tonight, as we did with both our athletes and our young singer. And it constantly reminds us that there's both darkness and light, and the light is seen obviously in the joy that we get from recognizing our wonderful and talented students. So we'll end on that note and just continue to work to provide more opportunities to our children to achieve their dreams and realize their aspirations and gift us with their incredible talents. Thank you. Mr. Isola?
Thank you, sir. Just following up the President's remarks, I certainly have an update and some information to share, and I certainly echo Mr. O'Brien and this entire board and dais point of view and sorrow that goes out to the incident, the horrific incident that took place in Florida a week ago. And, as a school superintendent, it is something that just weighs heavy on my heart, on my mind, and knowing the massive responsibility of securing our schools for approximately 6,000 students and the efforts that we go through with not only our partners in the police department, but our own internal staff and the policies and the decisions that we make every day. Just again, our thoughts and prayers go out to Florida, to the students and adults that were lost in that high school. So would be remiss if I did not speak to that. And I thank you, sir, for your beautiful remarks regarding Barbara Fernandez, a 30-year employee of our school district, absolute staple of Taunton Elementary School, has been in that school for 29 of the 30 years. Started as a 6th grade teacher when Taunton back in the day had 6th grade, and I think moved to 5th and ultimately has been in 2nd grade for over a decade now and impacting so many young lives. I had the opportunity to go to the visitation and saw a lot of teachers and some of ourselves were present there, and in speaking to take the opportunity to speak to two women who were in attendance, and they were introduced to me as parents of students of Ms. Fernandez. I said, oh, please trust that we're going to take good care of that class. And she goes, my baby's 19. And her friend goes, and mine's 21. I said, oh, Ms. Fernandez had an impact. She said more than anyone could understand. So what a tribute to a person who I just think Barbara she was a teacher. That described her, and it defined her life, I think, and I had the opportunity to speak to her husband, Orlando, and she kept saying, just one more year, and taken from us way too soon. So I will be asking this board to recognize her through her family at a later board meeting. Of course, we'll be putting a brick in her memory in our garden, in our memory garden. And, certainly I am hopeful. I have not discussed this with the family, but through our building leadership, hopefully we'll get one of her daughters is a teacher, but hopefully we can get her 2 daughters and her husband and her family to a board meeting and present them with that token of appreciation for Barbara's service to this school district. As if anything else is important, I'm going to go on to the rest of my report. So, Mr. O'Brien did mention that Chief Krujic and the Howell Township Police Department will be hosting right here at Middle School North next Tuesday at 7 p.m. The registration will open at 6, a forum for the community on school safety. Again, run by the police department. We'll be in attendance and partnering with the chief in any way he needs us to make sure we're communicating clearly with our community, the stakeholders, so, which is, of course, are the parents of our fine students. At this time, I'll ask Mr. Harvey, who moved. He was over here a minute ago. He's done. Mr. Harvey will come to the podium and just give us an update on some of the great work that was happening surrounding two important topics. And that's the Board of Education Student Day, which we're really excited about, the momentum that's getting already. And then, of course, the importance of February being Black History Month, some of the activities and the recognition that's gone on throughout the district. So, Mr. Harvey?
Thank you. I'll start with the update with the Black History Month. Black History Month acknowledges the rich contributions that African Americans have made to our country's history. Howell Township Public Schools' social studies curriculum is aligned with the New Jersey student learning standards that fully support the celebration of these contributions. Teachers utilize digital resources to ensure effective teaching of New Jersey's inclusive social studies curriculum, which infuses the central role of African Americans into the local, state, and national history. Digital resources include, but are not limited to, commonlit.org, New Jersey Amistad Curriculum.org, newzella.com, the National Museum of African American History and Culture, and African American History Month.gov. Teachers are engaging students in lessons celebrating the achievements of African Americans and the central role of African Americans in U.S. history. Lessons include read-alouds and close reading activities focusing on the accomplishments of African Americans, the African slave trade, and events concerning the enslavement of Africans and their descendants in America, as well as their struggle for freedom and liberty. Throughout the year, guidance counselors design and implement lessons focusing on diversity and respect, and middle school teachers routinely utilize articles and text sets in Newzella Pro and primary source documents to study the civil rights movement and struggle for equality. This past summer, the Social Studies Curriculum Alignment Committee added to the various resources in order to enhance the social studies instruction and the Amistad goals. We've been tweeting throughout the month the different classroom and building level events throughout the district, and we will continue to do so. The second update is regarding the Student Board of Education Day. We're very excited. We visited all 5 schools. I thought it was a great experience. I think the students were more understanding of the role of board members. I think the conversations we had with the students regarding the role and ideas at the end of our visits was just incredible. So I think we're looking forward to reviewing the essays and this exciting event. But I'll go over the dates again. The date is April 18th is the actual Board of Education Day. The prompt was already delivered to the teachers, and the students are working on it now. That prompt is, if you were to serve as a member of the Howell Township Board of Education, what policies would you implement or support in order to promote a positive learning environment for all students? All schools, again, were visited by the board members, Mr. Isola, myself. The essays are to be returned to the building principal by March 2nd. And between those selected, there'll be 3 from each building. Those selected will be interviewed by myself prior to receiving their appointment on March 21st. On March 21st, all students who are selected will attend a board meeting so they can understand the procedure of a real board meeting. They'll get their assignment, their actual role, and their committee assignment at that time, and they'll also get their IDs, official IDs, which they love. But we're looking forward to it. Again, April 18th is the actual board meeting, or the Board of Education Day. The students will be here on March 21st to witness or experience a live board meeting, and they'll receive their assignments at that time. Any questions? No? Yes.
Dr. Lowe.
I just wanted to say the video was excellent, having the video before and after, so I don't know who did it, but it just.
I agree that the open mic video, that was a great.
It really just put the.
We allowed Mr. Thor and Mr. Bongiovanni to struggle through the first one without it, and that's when we said, "Oh, how can we make this even?" I said, "Oh, we got the video." I remember, so we
I think
ran.
the video. Yeah,
It absolutely brought it to life for them. It gave them a visual, you know?
Give them what they'll experience in the daytime and especially the nighttime.
And then the young lady at Ramtown, she stole the assemblies. Yeah, I hope her essay's good. Because she should be here.
It was great, so amazing.
That was open mic, yes.
Yes.
That was our product, yes.
Selected essays, will you be sharing with those with the board members again?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey.
And completing my rest of my report, earlier this month, through the week of the 5th through the 9th, was an opportunity to recognize School Counselor Week. So we sent a letter of appreciation to all of them. We utilized social media, and building level folks certainly recognized the importance of school counselors within our building. And we did that earlier this month. And by last week, we recognized the importance of school guidance counselors as we grappled with one near to our heart this week, and at the end of last week, and then earlier last week, the incident in Florida. We recognized the importance of supporting students and staff, and our school counselors play a major role in that. Next Monday, the 26th, kicks off Read Across America. As we did last year, you will all be invited to be a guest reader, celebrity reader in our primary buildings. So we've developed a schedule. I'll have it here. I'll give it to Miss George for you to fill in if you would like to be. There's no limit. You can all go to every building. There's enough sections in the building that you can participate if you're available. There's a couple different dates here next week for you to do that. You can pick a book of your choice. I understand that Dr. Seuss is a favorite of some, but if not, we will certainly have a rich and robust library in each classroom that you could certainly choose from the literature that exists in the buildings. So either you can sign up tonight, or Ms. Gray or Ms. George can put this out digitally to you tomorrow if you're not sure about your calendar. So sign up as much and as little as you'd like, and we hope to see you in our buildings. Once you sign up, we'll let that building know that, Mr. Miller will be in your building, Ms. Mangano will be, this way they know to expect you, and you'll be on the list to come on in and read in either the kindergarten, first or second grade. So we did that last year. It went really well. I think those that participated enjoyed it. So we're really happy to kind of make that a new tradition as well. I think it's great for not only the kids, but for our staff to see you in that role, and we look forward to that next week. We also have two updates from the Education Foundation. They have two important events coming up. The Evening of the Stars is scheduled for March 22nd, and the Race to Educate is May 19th. So those are two big events. More to come on that as we get closer to both those dates. Graduation for our middle schools, much like this past June, we will shoot for an outdoor graduation date on Wednesday, and I know at least two of you are very interested in this. Outdoor graduation Wednesday, June 20th. If for any reason we have inclement weather and we are unable to produce or conduct an outside ceremony on the 20th, we will not go on the 21st, because that's the high school graduation day, the regional graduates, and we cannot be in conflict with that, and their day is set in stone. We will then move to Friday, June 22nd, for an outdoor graduation ceremony, allowing for multiple folks to come view their children graduate. If for any reason we have inclement weather on that Friday, we then will move inside to a ceremony inside for both venues. Last year, we escaped a quick storm, if you remember. We're hopeful that we can be as lucky this year without the quick storm. So that's the graduation update, and I'll get that out to all of you. I'll make sure that we email you all so you can mark your calendars. The graduation starts at 6.
Please have Mr. Senesek arrange for sunny blue skies.
Yes. Yes.
It's already done, sir.
The memorandum of understanding with the law enforcement is a requirement. We already did ours. This year, they added, and they if you remember, there was a delay this year. It was because they wanted a piece of the memorandum to include if you have live video for your police departments that we do in some of our buildings. Our police department can gain access to the cameras within our buildings. There should be, it was described that there should be a memorandum of understanding of use. Chief Krujik and I have basically put that together. Long and short of it is, it says that it's to be used for emergency purposes only. Either the chief or his designee or mine and my designee, that's really the extent of it. It shouldn't be used, just to, see what's going on in the schools. So that both Chief and I have signed that. Mr. O'Brien will sign it as well, and it becomes an addenda to the memorandum. It stays internally for both agencies. It is not required by, to be sent to the Department of Education. So, so that's been concluded, and we're very pleased with that.
Mr. Isola?
Yes, sir.
When, after that's signed, can you place that up on SharePoint
Absolutely.
again?
Absolutely.
I know it's been a longstanding technological capability of the police department for many years, right?
They've had access to the cameras and have never used them inappropriately. The Department of Education has just asked that we formalize that.
Absolutely. No, I understand that's been the practice for many years, and so.
In fact, and Mr. Sanisak can speak at an operations meeting perhaps to update. In fact, that was done through a collaborative grant with the police department. So they actually received a grant to do security upgrades throughout the buildings, and cameras were one of the things they did. What was that, back in like 2008, something like that?
Yeah.
So they were partners with that from Jump Street as well.
I mean, when you think back on it, long before you and I sat in our chairs, Mr. Isola, this district and this police department have been working collaboratively together. Dr. Golden, Chief Carter.
Absolutely.
One of the things that really is very, very satisfying is the ability to have replicated and replaced in the school resource officer program over the last year, which had been curtailed due to budget constraints, but through some creative work on a lot of levels, we were able to build a program again. So it continues, and I know we're all grateful for that. The work does continue.
And then my final two updates for my report are one of the topics you just mentioned. We received an email today. We had the opportunity to meet with a potential Special 3, Special Law Enforcement 3. We currently have 5. The police department has found a 6th member of the team, and is going through the process of onboarding him. Once the person is trained and is scheduled by second week of March to be added to the Special 3 workforce for us, I will get everyone their name, and actually, I would imagine, knowing Chief Krujik, he'll probably have him at the forum, so maybe if he's there, I'll introduce you. But once he's fully onboarded, I'll get you his name and the adjusted assignments that you are aware of.
Right.
So I wanted to update you on that as well. And then finally, the January suspensions. Each month, I'm required to update on the previous month. It's coming around. Mr. Sanisak's handing it to Mr. Gurman at this time. And there were 8 school suspensions during the month of January. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Isola. Any questions from the board? No. Seeing none? Okay, we're going to move. All right, then.
Discussion, sir?
Yes, I noticed the new format is everyone, we now have a somewhat different format. And on topic tonight is the focus topic, discussion of the board vision and mission statements. We had a little bit of a discussion yesterday, Mr. Bongiovanni, Mr. Isola, Mr. President and I. We feel that this is a great area to be worked at through the committees, especially with the Professional Learning Committee. But tonight I'd like to put it on the table for discussion for any board members. Mr. Preston, I believe you had worked up some language for the board? While you're doing that, just as a clarification, I think one of the things that the initial conversation maybe wasn't quite clear is that this is specific to the board as opposed to separate from a strategic plan. I know I've had opportunities to talk with many board members, and they've helped clarify that. As we go forward, this board has done such great work that there's a desire to maybe look at some of the things that we do from a cultural standpoint, from a procedural standpoint, from a process standpoint, committee standpoint, all the things that help us to get to the level that we're at right now, and will help us to continue to grow and evolve and get even better. So as you look up on the screen or on your computers, not on the computer? Okay. No. All right, well, there you go. Well, all right then. But if you look on there, you'll see very bottom, I believe, starting with the vision statement. And this is a initial offering, which can serve as food for thought and discussion.
Yes,
Please.
or stand aside.
Or even I could read it. My glasses work. I can do it. I will give it a shot. Let's see. Mr. Preston, you want to take the honors? Go ahead. I think.
Not particularly, but
All right,
if
well,
you would like me to, I may.
Yeah.
I
I'll have the young eyes of Mr. Thor read it for us then. How about that? I'm designating.
The Howell Township Public Schools Board of Education will always be a collaborative team that synergizes the lessons of the past with the challenges of today for the solutions of tomorrow in an open, constructive, and welcoming manner to make this district better for everyone, every day.
Excuse me. Thank you. You too.
I can tell you that that was not the original vision statement when we started the conversation, but I really liked where we ended up.
Or may it be the final.
And it may not be the final either, but the point is, I like the process that got us where we are now, and that's there in front for the board to consider. We're not asking anybody to do a quick revision on the fly, but perhaps we could share it with each board member and allow them to think about it and suggest revisions and bring it back to committee. Would that be acceptable?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it may be helpful to just, again, re-emphasize, I think, certainly one key component of this, as we were discussing it, we felt it very important to clarify that this is a vision statement for the Board of Education itself, something different. It's, this is, I don't think this would be common practice for many boards, but this is for the Board of Education itself. This board is no stranger to doing new things to strengthen its current boardsmanship. The other piece I think becomes important is we talked about now process. This was suggested language pulled from our past two retreats, from all the artifacts that we produced over the past two retreats and some of the discussion that we had at the last board meeting. And again, by no means does this represent some sort of final product for a vision statement, but rather we had discussed yesterday that with the suggestion of the board, this might be a good opportunity to kick off the board professional learning committee to kind of take on the opening of this, and then move this around to the various committees for discussion and input, and then come back to the next several board meetings.
You know, it's, from my point of view, this is a vision statement that a future board can amend, of course, as they go along. But, if you look at the analogy being that boards of education can change dramatically over time because we're an elected body and people come and go because that's the nature of how we are structured. So every year, 3 board members run for re-election, and over a course of 2 or 3 cycles, boards can completely change. But when you look back at some of the work that we've done and the accomplishments we've achieved together as a team, it's a thought to challenge ourselves to put that down and create a structure that perhaps could be shared and given to future boards and help us to continue the work and continue to evolve and not necessarily take a step back, with each board being able to come in and, of course, update, revise, and evolve the vision statement as they move along. Because who knows what education is going to look like in 15 or 20 years. But certainly, the end of the conversation was it became something that I think is open enough that I think it can stand the test of time. But certainly, we're only at the beginning of the process. So as you look at that tonight, think about it. Your input is important. And we'll work it through the committee. Mr. Preston, you had another piece for us, I believe?
I don't, no.
The mission statement will follow, right?
The mission statement will follow. We kind of worked through the vision statement and left it there. mission statement will follow, because I think the vision statement will help to start to shape that. So once we have more of the vision statement solidified, then the mission statement, I think, will start to follow more concretely.
I like the idea of having every committee take a swing at it and think about it, because I think that'll add to it, and then bring it back for final compilation to the Professional Learning Committee. Is everybody good with that? We'll try to accomplish this over the next couple of months, working collaboratively together. Any thoughts, feedback, anything? Seeing none? We're good. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Sanisek, I believe.
It is now time for the committee
Committee
updates
updates.
and
I think I-
liaison reports. Mr. O'Brien?
Got to remember something. All right, I always have a habit of which way I'm going to pick, left or right. Tonight we will start on my left. So I'm going to start with Mr. Gurman. Well, we're going to go to our policy chair.
Yes, I'd like to go into three things. One, I'm the liaison with the HTEF.
Absolutely you are.
And again, Mr. Azzola talked about Evening of the Stars. One of the things we're always interested in is outcomes. What happens to our students? Well, again, this event that we have annually is, to me, the most touching of all events. What we do is the foundation, which is a 501c3 not-for-profit entity, and again, as we know, they raise funds that then are used by our staff for innovative programming. But what we do, and what the HTEF does that evening of Evening of the Stars, is invite back former students in our schools who went to our K-8 schools. And I must tell you, the format has been phenomenal. We generally ask someone who has been acquainted or knew and worked with that person who we're honoring to introduce the person, and then we ask that the person who's being honored to talk for a few minutes. And we get people from every walk of life, whether it be the business world or journalism or communications or entertainment or the military or law enforcement or whatever. And it was sports, achievement in sports. And when you listen to their presentations, which come from the heart, which are not rehearsed, it is amazing when you begin to get an insight of what it means. And as people reflect back what it meant, actually, to have been a student here in this district and what it has meant in their life. So it's a real fun event, doesn't last for long, it's open to the public, it's free, and I really urge the fellow members of the board and everyone else to come out.
What was the date again on that?
That is March 22nd. I took notes, as always, from Mr. Azzola, so I got that.
Very good.
Second thing I'd like to do, and it turns to me first, I was able to have the opportunity and the privilege of going down to Washington with Mr. Bongiovanni, with Mr. Miller, with Ms. Malley, with Mr. Sanisek, for 3 days of advocacy, of meeting with our legislators, meeting with people from other states, and learning what was going on. And I certainly don't want to steal the thunders. We have people here who have a great deal of expertise and knowledge and involvement in this. But I do want to mention a few key points as a person who was on the board many years ago, but has only been back for 1 year. So I just want to tell you some of the reflections I have briefly. One, I know we were joking with Mr. Bongiovanni, are we the first or second best state in the nation with education? We can joke a little about that. But frankly, New Jersey is recognized as being a great leader in education. We're not saying that, and I'm not saying that to feel proud. What we're concerned about is what it means for our children, our students, and the possibilities that we have. Second of all, I began to learn just by casual conversations over days what goes on in other states. So we realize we have a base to work on, and we're constantly always trying to do better, but we have that base. And even within the state, meeting with colleagues from other boards, begin to realize that we're on firm ground to do so much for our students. So that was the first point. Second quick point, there was talk about school choice. And one point that I learned and I got a reflection about was that we have school choice here in Howell. And without going into too much in specifics, we have special ed, we have G&T, we have enrichment programs, we have personalized learning, We are working on the goal of reaching every student at every different level with an enriched curriculum. And so that is the direction we're going. There's plenty of choice as our children, our students have opportunities to develop in so many different areas and to grow and enjoy a better life. And the third point, and I really want to take a moment on this. So we had the opportunity, for instance, one day to meet with staff from Senator Booker and Senator Menendez's office. And it was interesting because we had leaders from the state talking about why we need to support our educational system. And I must say, unbeknownst to us, that same day, major decisions were being made in Congress. The following day, the two houses came out with a $300 million package for a budget, and it involved a tremendous amount of expenditures. And it struck me what this meant. I must say, in my past life of working in a different venue, I was on the other side, frankly, where people would come, and I was serving legislators in the state, and you would have many people come with not on education and not necessarily just on budget, but on all sorts of policy issues. And they would come and they would each present separately what their goals were and what they were looking for. So this is what I really want to end up with. How do we fit into that? That day when they made that agreement and the United States Congress went with it, they spent money and are spending our money on defense and military. They also, just briefly, they spent money on fighting opioid addiction. They spent money on, or decided to spend money on hurricane relief throughout the country. They spent money on CHIP, continuing CHIP, giving 9 million young people the opportunity to have health care. So here's my point. Where do we fit into this? We spend most of our time, and I normally will not do this, but I will say this, we spend most of our time talking about particular programs, and that's what we should be doing, and not having this speech perhaps. But we need to undergird it with why we should be so supportive of education. And my mind went back, given my age, to Sputnik. This country was rocked in October of 1957 when a Russian or Soviet satellite went into orbit. And I can remember it, and I've studied it and looked at it again. All of a sudden, there was a tremendous furor throughout the country. We are falling behind in education, and it is imperative that we do something about it. So I went to the preamble of the National Defense Act of 1958. If you won't mind, I want to mention a few sentences. The National Defense Education Act of 1958 states, "The Congress hereby finds and declares that the security of the nation requires the fullest development of the mental resources and technical skills of its young men and women. The present emergency demands that additional and more adequate educational opportunities be made available. The defense of this nation depends upon the mastery of modern techniques developed from complex scientific principles. It depends as well upon the discovery and development of new principles, new techniques, and new knowledge." Now, we know that education and public school education should be handled primarily on the local basis. And we know that the state plays a primary role. But the federal government understood this. And again, we're not simply talking about a war against another nation. We realize that, and I would say this, a quality education with a rich curriculum, including involvement in the arts and literature, foster young imaginations and facilitate children's success in school. When we provide our students with a first-rate education, we are giving them the opportunity to, which we're working at every day, we're giving them the opportunity to develop critical thinking, communications, and innovation skills essential to a 21st century workforce, and also giving them the opportunity to develop so that we have a happy, prosperous, stable citizenry that wants to go forward. So reading this gave me that strength so that whereas other important programs are going forward, as we then go back to those specifics, I feel that strength and especially having gone to Washington, feel that strength of wanting to go forward in this direction. Okay. Now on the policy committee, two points. We had discussed the dressing grooming here, and it went back to committee, and we had another discussion, a very productive discussion, and it worked out. I think we reached a consensus. We talked about a couple of things about language in the regulation having to do with being things, that we have neat clothing and all that. And it was pointed out that the policy is written, or the regulation is written in such a way that it shows the public what direction we want to go to protect and support their children. The other point that came up was the question about differences perhaps between different principals and how they might treat the issue. And I think, if I may speak for the group, and there may be others who may want to participate, I think we came to a consensus that we trusted that the principals used appropriate discretion to implement the regulation in an appropriate manner. So that's where we were on that. One other policy we've been talking about for a while, we finally, came to grips with a bylaw, and it's in our packet tonight for consideration, having to do with participation of board meetings using video conferencing equipment. So it has a number of elements, I'm sure, as you've looked at. It calls for at least a physical presence of a quorum here before you would allow the video conferencing. It talks about the fact that generally there could be 2 times a year that a board member would be able to use this option, with first noticing the president and getting the board president's approval, and getting the opportunity for staff to get the equipment in place. There's also some provision here in an emergency situation for the board to be able to allow, with a majority of the board agreeing, to allow for additional times of participation through video conferencing. In addition, it emphasizes it doesn't at all apply to executive session, and most importantly, it also provides that all materials and documents would be in the hands of the participant who's at a remote distance, and that they would participate and be able to hear and see everything going on, and everyone in the room would have the same opportunity. So it conforms to the Open Public Meetings Act. So that's sort of the basis of that bylaw. Thank you.
Yes.
You've heard the term elevator speech. I want to put your piece about advocacy on my MP3, because when somebody says to me, why do you relish being a board member? That's it.
Thank you. Any further? Mr. Gurman, thank you. The passion that you exhibit in your speech is one of the elements of success and why our board leads, why Howell leads, and I thank you for that, because you remind all of us of the fact that public education gets a bum rap sometimes. Yet, at the end of the day, public education is what transformed this country and made it a leader in this world. So everything that we've built over the years as a society, as a country, has come because we have a literate, well-educated population of citizens who think critically, challenge authority, push the envelope, and ask the hard questions. And that's because their education is here, not just for some elite who can afford, but every person has the opportunity to better themselves and reach their goals and aspirations. So thank you for your passion, and it's shared by everyone here, and we appreciate the reminder of what's important. Thank you. Okay. With that, I will now turn over to Ms. Malley, who I believe has something to tell us.
Lots to tell, actually. We had our first meeting on February 13th. The first thing we did is we did review the strategic plan and the action plans that went with that, rolling safety into our committee for the first time. Basically, due to the diligence of the safety and facility teams, we have surpassed the established goals from the and we will continue to work forward as far as safety, continuing upgrades regarding drills and training involving the cafeteria staff and custodians, and continue bus drills and the continued use of wave enunciator to conduct lockdowns. As far as school facilities, we will continue with shared services, maintain and improve infrastructure, buildings, grounds, and facilities, and evaluating its alternative energy resources and technologies. We then presented a routine meeting schedule that the committee was accepted by the committee. So we have our meeting set with the understanding that if we were not to need one, we would then cancel that meeting. Okay. I guess the most exciting thing that we did talk about was the ESIP update. I believe last month I did mention that we were waiting for BPU approval, and we might have some really wonderful news. And our ESIP plan has been approved by the BPU. And part of the ESIP is replacing all the univents in the classrooms. And I believe I mentioned last month that because the solar pricing came in so low, we were able to potentially do something else, and that would be adding the condensers. And as a result, every classroom that does not currently have air conditioning will have air conditioning.
Yeah, let's hear it.
With absolutely no impact on the budget.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, there you go.
It's very exciting. Please note that it does not include the cafeterias and the gymnasiums. These are just the classrooms, but that's where the learning is, so that's the most important place. And the time frame for this will be over the next 18 months, 15 to 18 months, they will all be completed. So we will have some of it ready for September for the new school year, and then all of it will be done by the following school year. So that's very exciting stuff.
Fantastic news.
Yes, very exciting. Okay, continuing with ESIP, some of the other things that are going to be done, solar panels will be placed on almost every building, including repair and replacement of roofs by a solar company. We have new and more efficient chillers and boilers at North as part of the ESIP program. And I'm sure there's going to be other things that are, you'll see changes coming that are going to be more efficient uses of our facilities. The next thing we talked about, we had Mr. Coolidge present capital project budget priorities, including external building repairs on the brick, the plumbing and the gutters at Ardena, finish the roof repairs on Land of Pines, and throughout the district, update obsolete burglar and fire alarm panels, continue with conversion to the rubber mulch on all the playgrounds, continue with the door replacement program, upgrade the radio system, and continue with parking lot replacement and gym floor restoration. And another wonderful thing is Howell Basketball Club is donating 6 new basketball backboards. I believe that's on our agenda as a read-in. 4 at LOP and 2 at Newberry, so that's very exciting. We welcome those. Okay, the next thing on the agenda was we had a representative from one of our facility users requesting more time at the larger facilities. We have a protocol to follow for facility use, and the committee fully supports that protocol, and it was encouraged that the 2 clubs work together to resolve the issue. Okay, the last thing that we talked about was the proposed waste transfer station. That's Randolph Road down in the Ramtown section. Came to my attention in the safety concern that I immediately went to as the operations chair was the busing and the transportation of our children safely through that area with the potential increased heavy-duty construction vehicles that would be coming through there. So we discussed it at the committee in depth, and it was a great discussion. And what we would like to do, we are recommending to this board, and I'm asking this board's support for the committee recommendation, that we send a letter to the SWAC and the freeholders requesting a more in-depth traffic study, including the busing. So we want them to make sure that they do the traffic study during the times when buses are going to be in the roads and the surrounding rural roads, because we don't have sidewalks in that area of town. So the buses stop much more frequently to pick up the children, and we really want to make sure that they include that in their impact study. And I would like the support of the board to direct Mr. Sanisak to then please send that letter. And if I have all your support, then we will do that. Thank you. Mr. Sanisak, make it
I
so.
believe we can, Mr. Isola and I will be happy to sign that letter if we have the consent of the board, and it'll be sent out tonight.
I did, based on the Operations Committee and what I believed would be the board support, I did prepare a letter, and pending the concurrence this evening, I will hit send, and the freeholders and SWAC will have it this evening.
I move that the board approve the operations recommendation to send the letter to the freeholders. Seconded.
Thank you.
Favor?
Aye,
Add it
yes.
so you're going to have that voted already?
I'll record it as unanimous for I believe that's the A3.
Very good. Thank you for your work on that, Ms. Malley, and the entire Operations Committee.
Thank you very much for your support. The last thing we did was approve our minutes, and that was the end of our meeting. And that's the end of my report. Thank you very much.
Do you have the dates for the future operations that you can publish, or?
Yes, we have that list. Is it on the website?
We will be posting them. What the board had directed is that we post once all the committees have set their annual dates. We will post them all. If that is not convenient, we'll post them as they come available. But
And it would-
whichever the
We are-
board's
we are-
preference.
We are currently at the Tuesday before the board meeting every month. That is what we have set as our time frame, because then it gives time for the finance committee to meet on the Thursdays, so we can, if any issues that we have, we can pass to finance before the board meeting. That was the plan that we worked out with Mr. Miller and his committee, so that's currently where we are. Sorry, Mr.
No, that's fine. I think if a committee's already set their dates, I think they should be posted as soon as possible. Would that be acceptable to the
Yes,
board?
7 PM, I apologize, 7 PM, yes.
Rather than wait for everybody, I know different committees have different schedules at different times, but perhaps we could do that. All right, very good.
So be it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. A lot of work going on there. Yeah, a lot of good stuff. Now I turn to Dr. Lowe for our Education Committee.
Okay, the Education Committee met on February 5th. We have new members, citizen members, Todd Ettrell and Ken Neitzer, to join our committee. The strategic action plan review. The committee discussed the action plan for the strategic plan. The action plan was outlined at the board retreat and will serve as a guide to the strategic plan goals. The committees will begin to make more deliberate connections to the strategic plan. The 2018 committee goals will continue to make deliberate connections to the strategic plan and focus on personalized learning. Our education committee goals were reviewed by the committee. The committee reviewed the 2017 goals and made the following revisions to establish the new goals for 2018, which are: 1, continue to deepen the deliberate practices that make personalized learning a reality, and 2, explicitly align the education committee work to support the strategic plan. The draft 2018 goals will be sent to the committee for review and finalized at the March meeting. Education committee dates. The committee outlined the initial 2018 meeting dates. The dates will be sent to the committee for review and finalized at the March meeting. The dates are March 12th, which was changed due to consensus of the board, to March 5th, 7 p.m. So we're rotating our times, 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock. So the dates are March 5th, April 9th, May 14th, and June 4th. And we did ours till June. K-8 elementary music textbook adoption. The Fine Arts Music Program has been piloting a K-5 software program called Quaver since September. Both staff and administrations have been surveyed, revealing successful results. Contains customized standard-based music lessons for all grades, data integration with Schoology, an online subscription purchase for K-5 teachers not to exceed $13,000 for the district. Bless you. The committee voted unanimously to recommend the supplemental music program Quaver online resources for K-5, and that's on their board agenda. So some updates, we did our band update. Middle school students had the option this year to take band as an elective for half a year. Parents polled revealed positive results concerning the revised band schedule. The revised band schedule allowed for different elective options and opportunities for students. The next survey will include the middle school teachers and students, and the results will be shared in Education Committee when complete. And the end of was just a review of CUSAC, where we are. It's completed every year through the statements of assurances that were on previous board agendas. And this year is our third year cycle, which includes a more in-depth review. The state will conduct our in-district visit on March 7th. Only the instruction and program indicators of the DPR will be reviewed. And those are the minutes.
Thank you very much, Dr.
Dr. Lowe?
I'm sorry.
Oh, wait, we're not done. Hold that thought, Mr. Moore.
Sorry. They are very robust.
You have a question, Mr. Moore?
Yeah, was there any update on the new professional development that you did on that, I believe it was on that Monday? Oh, okay.
I'm going now, yes,
All right,
that's
thank
the
you.
third page. So Ed Camp, the district's first Ed Camp was held on February 5th. The personalized learning day for adults was structured into 2 participant-directed sessions and time for building-based engagements. The topics were chosen from teacher suggestions through topic submissions. Teachers directed the dialogue of the sessions, which created a successful day with a new design. The next meeting of the committee will be held based on the agreed date in March as listed above. Minutes from the November 27th Education Committee meetings will be approved at the next meeting. So that is the end.
Thank you, Dr. I had just a follow-up question on that. This is the first time you've engaged in this particular type of professional development, right? And it sounds like it was a success, and it was really driven, as indicated by Dr. Lowe, by the teachers themselves in terms of helping the structure and create it. So I applaud you. It was something that you've been working on for a while, and it seems like it was very successful. So I assume you're going to continue to use this format going forward?
Yes, and so it was our first ever such model that we utilized here. It's been an absolute drive of mine to personalize the professional learning for the adults, to customize it, to not direct it at them. We have some outstanding educators, and we really wanted them to take control of the learning. But it was our first time, and it looked like our first time. I'll be the first to admit that. But that doesn't mean that there's, the baby gets thrown out with the bathwater. It will be something that we continue to evolve with and use probably a blended model of facilitation along with truly participant-driven sessions. I think some staff is not yet totally comfortable in that environment, while others are, and what we want is to create learning environments where the professionals are comfortable in and excelling and gaining the most knowledge about topics. So it was absolutely a success, and lessons were learned throughout our day and experience. And I think the best news is we're getting honest feedback from our staff more so than ever before. The feedback loop is really opening up. Always a reluctance from staff to tell the superintendent that you missed the mark, obviously, but I think that there's been some really meaningful feedback that we're looking at closely to customize it further and make it really more centrally hit the mark. But that means we're going to have to blend some things and compromise on others and push on some, and that's what it takes. But really excited about it. Both full-day PD days this year, professional learning days, were, I'll use the Damon John, the clothing manufacturer, for us, by us, the FUBU, which was really his brand about urban clothing designed by urban kids at the time. And so I just really think that it's important when you have a district successful hours that we're listening to the most critical learners, our teachers, that hopefully are going to move forward with information they gain from those days. So yes, a huge success. Yes, some really big learning curve for us, I think.
We learned a lot.
We learned a lot.
Part of the success.
Yeah, so
Sounds perfect.
Forward.
Very good. You know, at the end of the day, as a professional, working in a very large organization, PD is part of our daily lives, continuing education. I applaud you because I think we could take some of those lessons back to my C-suite and hope they do it. A lot of times, you know, as a professional, you're given an agenda. Said, here's what we're going to learn. Here's the conference you're going to spend time at. This is where you're out of the classroom. You're out of where you're supposed to be, and you're off learning. If that's an investment of time, and it is valuable time, it's nice to have that ability to customize it to what really matters to you as a professional. So I applaud you guys on that. That's terrific. I'd like to take that idea back to mine, and I will. See how that goes. So thank you. Dr. Lowe, anything further?
Just, I know, and we can talk about our next meeting, that was the day of, so at the time, so maybe a little more, some conversations about that feedback.
Yeah, so, I mean, just as recently as yesterday, we're continuing. We've really spent a lot of time and energy to refine that feedback loop, as Mr. Isola was indicating. So we spent a lot of time working with the way that we do our survey, but then what do we do afterwards to continue to triangulate the rest of the information around that? We've gotten great and honest feedback from the staff that, you know, sometimes, this is true, we've all done it. Just fill out a survey with all great marks because I need to get that survey done. So we've refined that, made changes to that based on the input from the staff and our learning design committee. Trying to move then the collection of some of that information into more impactful areas of the building, using the school improvement panels, who are part of the design, the designers of the day, to collect some of that information, because colleagues are much more willing to share that information colleague to colleague than they are to put it into a survey. So sort of triangulating what's in the survey with what's the anecdotal, and collect that in a more organized way. So we started that process as recently as yesterday to begin that triangulation. So I should certainly have some more feedback on that day and what it means in terms of next steps for the next Education Committee meeting.
And then finally, I know Mr. Guston was here. Yep, Mr. Guston, the HTEA president, is here. We meet monthly with his with a committee that he spearheads through Ms. Lois Muhar as the chair, Academic Council. It's a contractual requirement, but like everything we do, it's more than a contractual requirement. It's meaningful. And some of the dialogue we had with that committee, which is senior administration, HTAC, and HTEA representation, was really informative just in there. And it was so, I just walked out of that meeting saying, wow, we're really having good dialogue about stuff, and we're not being petty about it. We're not being, you know, them, us. It was really good dialogue. And it was funny because right in that same room, there was, I loved it. It hit the mark perfectly. I need someone else to help facilitate so that we stay on task. And we were getting feedback, and it was a great thing. I said, look, there's 12 of us in the room. We can't even marry this, right? So, but just the ability to work with the units that are on the property in a constructive way helps us design learning opportunities for staff that they want to be part of. So, never perfect, but always working towards, right?
Absolutely. Very good. Thank you. Mr. Bongiovanni.
At our last community interaction meeting, Mr. Isola gave an update. Most of it's all the same material that we hear at each board meeting. There was also a plenty of discussion regarding committee structure, the ways to encourage more participation, including both the times and the locations. Based on that, a couple things. One, our next meeting is going to be February 1st at 7 p.m. I'm sorry, March 1st. Thank you. March 1st, 7 p.m., site to be determined. And at that time, we'll be talking about the goals, future dates, and something that Mr. Thor has really been pushing, and I'm glad he's really brought it to the committee's attention. Discussion about whether to do some type of live streaming, another way of making sure we reach out to the community and make sure that they are able to stay in touch with what's happening. So, Ira, thanks for bringing that to the forefront there. Mr. Gurman gave a really good account, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail regarding the advocacy conference that we attended, but I do just want to say one or two things. One, New Jersey school boards made a point of mentioning and thanking this district that Mr. Sanisak happened to be the only business administrator in the whole state who was sent by district to attend this, and was able to provide a good deal of information that only a BA would know, that we wouldn't necessarily have as much knowledge on. And when you're sitting there and talking to representatives from Congress about certain things, and they can turn to Ron and say, elaborate on that. I personally like to thank this board for its support in making sure that we make that voice heard when nobody else in the state did. The other thing I want to say about it is that it's a national conference. And of course, there are certain challenges that you anticipate hearing from other states just because of either economics or where they're at and their educational systems. But the part that's really warms this heart is when I hear other districts in this state talk about some of the challenges they have. Talking about a district where each one of their schools is 100 years old, and just trying to stay warm in buildings, just trying to make sure they can function in those buildings, not having the same safety features that we have. And certainly when it comes to staff, and this would come up often because of the conversations regarding Title IV in particular, not being able to provide the same professional learning that this board has constantly challenged Mr. Isola and his team with, and that they just continue to excel at. So again, you know, these meetings are recorded, and we hope that the members of the public are watching it at some point. What I'd like to let you know is that yes, our taxes are taxes, but at the same time, know that what this district is providing to your children is unequaled anywhere else in this state. I can just say that as a matter of fact. And it's in large part due to the efforts of this board, past boards, and certainly administration. So it was enlightening. And like I said, it makes me feel good about what we do at this table. Next meeting, as I said, is March 1st. Thank you very much.
March
7
1st,
p.m. and site to be determined. Go ahead.
Site to be determined, and as we discussed, we'll do a follow-up from the forum at community interaction on safety and aftermath and stuff of that nature.
Yep.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Belcher.
Mr. Miller.
The Finance Committee met on Thursday, February 15th. Mr. Sanisak discussed the strategic plan goal number 2 and the methods on how those goals were to be accomplished. Examples are alternative ways of providing services in a more efficient manner, develop alternative funding sources such as grants and etc. We reviewed the budget calendar and the statutory dates for submitting the fiscal year 19 tentative budget to the county office, the budget hearing, and the adoption of the final budget. The committee process will remain the same for the proposed budget reviews as we've done in the past. The department budgets with program changes will be brought before the committee, and we won't go line by line. Mr. Sanisak discussed that the governor's address is now scheduled for March 13th and how that will affect our budget timeline. We will then need to file a tentative budget with the executive county superintendent very, very shortly after. And the committee will, however, work with administration to continue to develop a final budget to be advertised for the public hearing, which will be on May 2nd here at Middle School North at 7 p.m. Ms. Sanisak and I reported to the committee, and you heard Ms. Malley discuss it, that the BPU has approved the Energy Savings Improvement Plan, and the committee was explained that the plan will include air conditioning for every classroom in a district. However, it will not impact the budget at all. Building and Grounds will have an app that they will be able to access via their phones for any building in the district, that they'll be able to control the temperatures, lighting, and other key functions right from their phones. The committee reviews the proposed budget transfers, and they voted unanimously to recommend them. They are on our agenda this evening for approval. The December 14th finance meeting minutes were reviewed and approved by the committee. I represented Howell as a member of the New Jersey Future Ready Task Force for Leadership, and that task force was charged with looking at 2017 indicators and updating them if needed. I was joined with Mr. Isola and two other people on a subcommittee, and we submitted our part to our committee chair. I took part in excuse me. I took part in the district recently welcomed the Montague School District in to see our work in STEAM and our Future Ready program. You already heard from Mr. Gurman and Mr. Bongiovanni about them and Ms. Malley, Ms. Sanasak attending the National School Board Association advocacy in Washington, D.C., where we spoke with Senator Menendez and Booker's aides about various topics such as IDEA funding and different title fundings that actually affect Howell Township. Mr. Bongiovanni and Ms. Malley and I spoke with Ramtown School fifth graders about the upcoming Student Board of Ed Day. Recently, Mr. Gurman and I attended the New Jersey School Board's Legislative Committee meeting. Diane Pascali of the New Jersey Department of Ed was in attendance and spoke about the newly revised performance reports that the NJDOE has recently released. These reports cover the 2016-17 school year, and they include more than 24 new data elements and parent-friendly summary reports that the school are able to put in. There was also two speakers that discussed county vocational and technical schools. And I want to personally thank the board and administration for hosting the last Monmouth County School Board meeting. You did a tremendous job. We really appreciate you going over and above for us. And the next county school board meeting is the 8th grade dialogue at Neptune High School on March 8th, and we look forward to having our 8th graders that evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. I know at an earlier board meeting, each of our committees worked so hard, and I want to continue with reports, but before I move away from finance, you know, obviously, as Mr. Miller pointed out, the governor will be making a speech and determining our state aid. As we go forward, this board has taken tremendous strides, and our superintendent has charged our business administrator, Mr. Sanasak, with coming up with operational efficiencies so we can greater focus on funding education. And he's done a tremendous job, he and his team, over the years in doing just that, to the point where we've been able to enjoy relative stability through the establishment of maintenance reserves and other types of sound financial planning. Again, hunting back to a long-term strategic plan. However, the future of state aid is uncertain. The status of this state as relative to other states is not as robust. The recovery here is not as strong as it is in other states. And I believe there's been discussion at this table about options. We have a very strong team here. I believe if we could, I'd like the board to consider charging our advocacy committee with the potential development of legislation around some topics that were discussed. I believe Dr. Lowe had mentioned something about New York having a different structure for reserving dollars, and to enhance the already excellent work of our business office in terms of preparing a buffer and allowing us to continue to focus on stability and funding education. Would it be the pleasure of this board to charge advocacy with reaching out to OLS and then engaging with our legislators on both sides of the aisle, both Democrat and Republican, to craft legislation that could address and enhance our ability to increase our reserves, with the caveat that we want to make sure that it's not going to be seized by the state in the event of a shortfall elsewhere. Would that, any questions or concerns on that, or do we have consensus to do that? That's building, and I appreciate you taking the time to consider that. It's building off of previous discussions. I wanted to get the advocacy committee to work on that, as I think it's timely. Yes.
And what I would be happy to do is, once anything like that is developed and agreed to by this board, as a member of the board of directors for New Jersey school boards, I'd be happy to report on anything that we do in regards to at the state level to try to encourage greater greater participation and support from other districts. I'm sure that Mr. Miller would end up doing the same at the Monmouth County meetings.
I think that's an excellent idea, and part of the team structure, we're going to focus on this because we have a voice for thousands of children, thousands of families. And one of the things that we have a mission is to continue to provide and grow quality education. And we're threatened by factors outside of our control at the state level. But if we can be given more autonomy to control a little more and to build reserves in anticipation of shortfalls in the future, that will protect our taxpayers, it'll protect our students, it'll protect our educational programs. And I think it's critical, so we can put all forces to bear, all hands on deck. I think now is the time to do it, because in the years to come, I foresee that there might be some problems with the current level of state funding, and we want to prepare for that. Yes. So let's get ahead of it. Thank you. All right, good. So we'll look forward to the progress reports on that. I know it's a difficult process, but something that, fortunate, we have you with a background in OLS, we have our advocacy, we have our delegates, we have the folks in place. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Miller, and appreciate your hard work through budget season. We look forward to it. The outcome. Ms. Mangano, I believe you have a report for us on some recent developments at the township.
West Farms Road.
This is the one on West Farms.
Will continue to follow this issue and others. We'll have an ability to ascertain the impact on our needs for busing, transportation, everything else, and our demographics, right? So that's one of the critical reasons why you're where you are, and I appreciate your taking the time to go to that meeting. Thank you. Keep us informed. Very good. So April 5th will be the next one.
And it is not age restricted. It's open to anyone. Right.
Okay. Well, very good.
It's a pilot for 50 years, you said?
It's a pilot program, so came in lieu of taxes for 50 years. It also, they would do criminal background checks on the applicants. It would be a three-step process. So when asked about that, how they would follow through, if there was any criminal things that went on with the residents, they couldn't answer that. They also couldn't answer the fact that because it's income guideline, by income guidelines, so if somebody got an apartment there, and say they were making $40,000 this year, and they start to make $120,000 next year, they can still continue to live there. So that's something that's a concern, because there's supposed to be some affordable housing. So there's a lot of questions, and there's a lot of up in the air things that are not being answered, so that's why the public is so enraged.
I'll say this, because I've been following this issue for a year and a half. There is a lot of concern, partially because of the pilot program. I think that's where this, originally you started to see some outrage in the community, because you don't know how this is going to impact our schools and other things that require tax dollars, for years to come. And there's a lot of unknowns there. And there's probably been discussion on this on social media, God, for 18 months now. So it's been an issue with a lot of passion from our community, and they've been coming together.
Well, I think based on what I'm hearing, the issue is still open and not resolved yet. Mr. Satisek, you had something to add?
Well, just following your lead on the surplus issue being turned to advocacy, There was a bill in the last session, I'm not sure if it's been reposted, but it was to address ensuring that the proceeds of any pilot are shared at an equal proportion as they would be had there not been a pilot, to cover some of Mr. Thor's points about the impact of a pilot on the Board of Education. And maybe with your and the board and Mr. Gurman's permission, we could add that bill to advocacy to monitor as well.
I agree. Anything that has an impact on our ability to deliver to our mission is important. Pilot is a confusing issue. You know, I understand a little bit. I've been following it a bit, but I think at some point in the appropriate forum, we need to have better clarity on, you know, how it.
Again, with Mr. Miller's consent, I'll present a little background of pilots at Finance.
That's great. And then any board member that, you know, wants to learn more about it, you know, they can pop in and listen. I think it's an important thing, and I appreciate you taking the time to do that, Mr. Miller. We'll get squared away on that. And Ms. Mangano, thank you for keeping an eye on things over there. As we continue, this is not the only development under consideration, and there's a process going on in many areas, obviously with the transfer station, with the West Farms project, with many other developments across our community. And that's why we're going to continue to be careful and observe and learn where relevant to us and our mission, what we can do to understand and prepare. So thank you. Okay. I believe that concludes our
And it does.
committee and liaison reports.
Time for the first public comment, if I may,
All right.
sir.
Very good.
Whereas the Howell Township Board of Education determines the comments may last 45 minutes, and those comments will be conducted in accordance with its bylaw 0164.1. Individuals may be limited to 3 minutes each. The officer with respect to time and decorum will be the President of the Board, Mr. Timothy O'Brien. With your permission, sir, may the floor be open. Are there comments from the public at this time?
Yes? Good evening, Miss Everett. How are you? Miss Everett and I know each other from a long time ago back on the soccer fields, right?
Yes, and for those that don't know me, I'm Mrs. Everett. I have a daughter in 8th grade and a son in 5th. And, I mean, first of all, what I do want to say to all the board members, Mr. Azzola, and of course our chief of police, is that never once have I feared, since the kids have been in the district, sending them for their safety. We're very proactive. I've spoken to parents in other districts, and, you know, it's surprising just how lax some districts are. And, you know, we're definitely above the curve, I feel. Now, after the last after Florida, I brought to Mr. Izzola's attention some things that my daughter brought out. It's free to share the email. And last night we were watching the news, and they were showing there's a school in Indiana that I believe has more security than Fort Knox. And my son was like, that's something we should have. Well, of course, I explained the cost difference, you know, the cost to him. They actually said for this school it cost him $400,000. But it looks like something out of a James Bond movie. They actually can deploy smoke bombs to blind an intruder. You know, a little above and beyond. But there were some things that came up. And again, they're not greatly cost effective, but there may be more out there. One is that there is a company that's offering that retrofits doors with, they're known as door shields, and they have a level 3G bulletproof protection. And this is the highest level available. It is designed to stop bullets from your high-powered weapons. Of course, I did look up the price. It's very costly. It's $500 per door. But it's a fiberglass shield. I don't know if there's other companies. This was the one that I happened to find. They also manufacture what's called a remote control door lock. Again, to me that's going a little above and beyond. Again, $500 for each door. And one thing that's very simple that I saw, in each classroom and throughout the school in the different rooms, they brought in experts, firearm experts, that had determined should somebody be able to get the gun in through a window, shoot through the door, but just able to get the scope of the gun in. What's called the safety zone. And all it is they had a red line, you could do any color, but a line on floors in all the different rooms as to where the safety zone would be. And the one thing that they pushed with that is it gives kids, they know what that's there for. If something happens, it's not a matter of forgetting, oh, do I go to the right side of the room or to the left? They just look for that line and they get behind it. And I mean, that's something I believe our police department would probably be able to assist with. And, if not, call on me. I will go out and advocate to find somebody, or I'll work with the PTOs or other parents to do fundraising to get the experts in for that. What I was originally looking at was the Barracuda door locks, which you can buy in Walmart for $125 each. But I am aware that there's many reasons why districts don't allow them, such as, it allows an intruder to actually lock themselves in the room at times. Or if somebody was, say you had, God forbid there was a shooting and 3 children were injured but managed to climb in and knew that was there and locked it in. But then their injuries were bad, they couldn't unlock it. It hinders, somebody being able to get in and rescue them. I don't know if we have a policy on that. I don't know, again, I saw this last night, looking up ideas that I saw from it. And, now it's time, I hope the Freehold Regional District is as proactive with, as Mr. Miller, we both know our daughters are all moving into it.
Absolutely.
The other point that I'd like to speak about is one thing I've noticed, and this involves the parental involvement, the feeling of community, the feeling of parents that they are involved with everything. Some schools follow, one visit to the principal, you receive a call home to the parents. Others, I know I've received calls after the principal or vice principal or counselor has spoken to my child 3 or 4 times. I would like to see the district look at something going into effect where, maybe not the first time, because I know sometimes child's acting up, the teacher's had enough, send him to the principal talks, and boom, different child. But, maybe after the second time a parent's notified. And also, it bothers me as a parent that children are brought in and asked to give written accounts of things that happen. And the parents are not given the opportunity. I understand that there's privacy issues, black out the names of the other children. But let the parents, if they want, now, there's copies, there's a written document that our children have signed that the parents honestly have no idea what's in it, other than what their child tells them. And if there is an issue, yes, the school counselors, the principals, they know our children. But a parent can also quickly sit and read that and say, something doesn't seem right. It looks like my child's embellishing a little. Or it looks like that's not what my child told me. Because on 2 occasions, once with my son, he'd done a homework assignment as a punishment because he was talking during lunch, but his talking was telling the other kids to be quiet because he couldn't hear the teacher that was up making an announcement. He didn't think it was fair. I said, no, you were wrong, but he asked for permission to write on his assignment, yes, I am wrong, I was sorry. However, I was just asking people to be quiet. I allowed him to do that. Wasn't a parent requirement. I signed it. I found out that his assignment was tossed aside, and he was told exactly how to write the apology letter. And, it's just, there needs to be something across the district as to when parents are notified. And again, I think it's very important that if a child's putting something in writing, the parent should be notified and a copy should be available to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Everett. I know Mr. Sanisek was taking notes on that, and I'm sure there'll be a discussion at the leadership team about some of the issues you pointed out. And if there's any action further that the board needs to be involved, they'll bring it to our attention. But thank you for your sharing. And thank you for your concerns and energy you put into looking for options for safety. Hope to see you at the forum next week.
Oh, definitely.
Thank you. All right.
Further comments? Seeing none, sir, may the comments
the
be
floor.
closed. It is now time for, we have another opening for discussion. I don't believe I had any items, though.
No, so.
Focus
we'll move
topic
forward.
was the discussion for this evening. It is now time for the consent agenda.
I need a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Very good.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Thor, second by Ms. Malley.
Thank you. I have read-ins. Please note that in the 3000 series number 7, insert the name Ariella Gold. Ariella, A-R-I-E-L-L-A, Gold, common spelling, 42,000. On 7,000, number 2, the word scoreboards should be changed to backboards. And the addenda is A1 through A3, with A3 being the one we added. May I take that around? Mr. Thor?
Yes.
Mrs. Malley?
Yes.
Mr. Gurman?
Yes.
Dr. Lowe? Mrs. Mangano? Mr. Miller?
Yes, abstain on 5,000, 11, and 12.
Thank you. Mrs. Okerson? Mr. Bongiovanni?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
The consent agenda, including the backup, is approved. 9 votes in favor, none opposed, with the abstention noted for the record. If there's no other business, may I do the second public comment, sir?
Yes.
Please recognize the announcement made just shortly ago for the first public comment. It is now time for the second public comment. The officer with respect to time and decorum will be the president. May the floor be open.
Please.
Other comments at this time? Seeing none, sir, may the floor be closed.
It's closed.
Move it. You're looking for me.
I didn't even get a chance to call, but,
He
all
gave me
right.
the look. I thought it was
Would you
time.
like a banner for next time?
I believe that was a preemptive adjournment motion. Is
I
there a second?
believe Ms. Malley read my mind, and as I was thinking about calling for a motion to adjourn.
We need to get
So,
you a banner.
Thank you.
Hold it up in the
Your
air.
record remains unbroken, Miss Malley.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The board is adjourned.